Hello everyone, Max here with Fiction Rant to bring you another episode of Future Tech That Actually Sucks, where I look at a technology from the near or far future and give a few reasons why implementing such a technology would actually be a terrible idea. Also, I recently created a Ko-fi account for anyone who wants to support the channel, and you'll find the link in the description. This week, I'll be talking about nuclear power, or more specifically, highly distributed nuclear power, like nuclear cars, computers, things like that. Not nuclear power plants, those are great. Granted, this isn't something you'll see proposed all that often anymore, but it's something that you see from time to time, in particular in the Fallout series of games and now TV show. For anyone who's unaware, the premise of Fallout is that World War III has happened. The whole world has been nuked, and now, a couple hundred years later, everyone is trying to make a living in the post-apocalyptic wasteland while fighting each other, horrifying mutated beasts, and the elements, now with, radiation mixed in. One of the interesting elements of the Fallout universe is that despite the fact that they're going around all these ruined cities and their infrastructure that have been bombed to just be husks of what they were, there's still tons of functioning electronics, including robots and computers. The reason why they're still powered is because they're nuclear powered through a combination of miniaturized fusion and fission power plants and batteries. Now, while it would be fantastic to have a computer that you never need to plug in and it'll still have power 100 years later, I, for one, would prefer the damage that my computer does to me be restricted to mental scarring from doom scrolling and sore joints from sitting around too much. I am quite happy to not also get cancer from sitting too near a badly shielded nuclear power plant. Radiation poisoning and cancer from using a computer isn't all that would happen from a system like this. Remember, in Fallout, you've got a ton of nuclear-powered robots, cars, and other infrastructure scattered everywhere. There's an old phrase that I like to keep in mind with this kind of thing. No plan survives contact with the enemy. This is just as true in engineering as it is in war. You can never plan for everything, and you can never fully anticipate the stupidity of your users. There's no such thing as totally idiot-proof, and there's absolutely no such thing as drunk idiot-proof. So why am I saying this? Well, in short, if you put dangerous stuff in everyday objects, people will do dangerous stuff with them. Add in a nuclear component, and you've got people doing permanently dangerous stuff with those objects. Take a nuclear-powered computer. Even assume that it's actually well enough shielded to protect the user under normal use. Now add a house fire, or someone who's just super mad that they got dumped and tried to pulverize their computer with a hammer, or some enterprising kid who took it upon themselves to intentionally take it apart while tinkering around. Instant contamination. Now apply the same thing to cars. Assume again that it all goes well, they're perfectly safe and shielded. Now add a bad wreck. Or just someone not keeping up on routine maintenance. Or someone trying to juice their car up for a drag race. Bada bing, bada boom! Well, not really. For all of these, there's a major caveat. You see, when people think about the danger of nuclear, they often imagine what should be a nuclear plant meltdown or nuclear-powered ship getting sufficiently damaged that you just get this nuclear explosion like what happened at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Oh no! Yeah, that can't happen. Thermonuclear bombs are super finicky to the level where they're basically impossible to detonate accidentally. And part of the reason for this is that they require special types of fissionable material and need a detonator that applies a very specific amount of directional force to start the fission reaction. You're basically ramming chunks of fissionable material together super duper fast, and that causes the fission reaction. It's not easy to do. None of these factors exist inside of a nuclear reactor. The fuel isn't capable of the runaway fission reaction that you need for a bomb, and there's no detonator. What they can do is melt down and possibly cause a steam explosion, since they're still turning water into steam to turn a turbine, so there's water there, and if you superheat water, you get steam. If that happens, you don't get a huge mushroom cloud or a giant blast wave or anything like that, but what you do get is a ton of radioactive material spread all over the place. And that's what would be happening if any of these devices I'm talking about were to be damaged to the point of leaking radiation. Basically, it's the difference between an actual nuclear bomb and a dirty bomb. The nuclear bomb comes with a giant explosion, tons of heat, lots of destruction, and the radiation afterwards is more kind of a side effect rather than an intended result. A dirty bomb doesn't involve any fission at all and basically involves taking some dangerously radioactive material and then spreading it over as much area as physically possible, typically through some kind of explosive. In Fallout, it's even theorized that most of the destruction everywhere isn't actually from the nuclear bombs themselves, but all the secondary effects from thousands of nuclear-powered devices being destroyed all at the same time. Speaking of dirty bombs, I'll talk about one more area that has no business being nuclear-powered. Space rockets. Let me clarify. Nuclear-powered spacecraft that are built in space, using materials mined off-world, preferably, would be super awesome, and I am all for it. However, launching nuclear material into orbit using a rocket is a terrible idea, because though it doesn't happen that often, accidents do happen, and rockets sometimes explode. And again, if that happens, you're just going to spread whatever nuclear material you're carrying over a really big area, and I think most people will agree with me that that's a bad thing. There's even a really interesting propulsion method that was proposed back in the 1950s and 60s called the Orion Drive, which involves building a spacecraft that has a big ol' armored pusher plate on the back with shock absorbers. So the idea is that the ship drops nukes, flies away from them for a little while, and then detonates the nuke and uses the shock wave to shove them along. And the shock absorbers are there to avoid turning everyone inside into paste. Repeat this process a few times, and you get a pretty good amount of acceleration out of the deal. This drive can also be used to achieve orbit, like you're on the ground and you detonate nukes in order to get off the ground. I don't recommend doing that because it involves repeatedly nuking your own planet in the same spot. So yeah, kind of hazardous. Use chemical thrusters for that kind of thing. So where should we use nuclear power? Well, in the power grid is a pretty good place, preferably in geologically stable areas so we don't have any more Fukushima incidents, though really these days the designs for nuclear power plants are so good that even a massive earthquake or even something like a missile strike won't actually cause major radioactive contamination. They'd potentially brick the power plant and make it useless, but everybody'd be fine, except for, anybody that was hit by a missile. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that nuclear power is the safest, most reliable, and cleanest source of power we currently have, so that's very exciting, assuming it can, overcome its public relations problem. People are very scared of radiation, and they're not unreasonable for being so. Nuclear power is also great for ocean-going ships, since even if they sink, there's very little contamination, since water is amazing at stopping radiation. So the best thing to do with any nuclear wreck is nothing. Let it stay at the bottom of the ocean. The military's known this forever. That's why the biggest ships are all nuclear powered. In the meantime, they get a super efficient power source that can run for literally years on relatively minimal fuel. It can even be a good idea to put such reactors on some of the larger freight ships like oil supertankers to limit oil spillage in the oceans and increase efficiency. Stop all this emissions stuff. Finally, as a power plant on board starships that are built in space with fuel sourced off-world. As I mentioned earlier, having a rocket carrying a payload of nuclear fuel is a huge dirty bomb risk, but if we're sourcing the uranium or whatever on Mars or something, and we're launching it into orbit from somewhere like that, who cares if we dirty bomb it? Nothing lives there anyway, and it's being bombarded by solar radiation all the time, so it wouldn't make any difference. But what do you think? Are there other places where nuclear power should or should not be used? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want to support the channel, again, check out the coffee link in the description, and until next time, live long and prosper, and may the force be with you.